Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to your Thursday edition of the Post Up with David Grubb right here on Boot Crew Media. I, of course, am David Grubb. I'm glad to have you with me. First, forgive me, it's incredibly hot. My goodness, man, it's hot. And, it takes you a second to adjust and get a little less humid. And for me, it always takes longer than for other people. I come from a sweaty group of people. My family is sweaty. I'm sweaty. And that's just how it is. So forgive me while I try to compose myself a bit. But the reason we're doing this a little bit earlier today, typically we come on at 5 o'clock, but today we're going a little early because today is schedule release day. And just moments ago, the NBA released the New Orleans Pelicans official schedule for the 25-26 regular season. Well, the first thing I can tell you is the reports yesterday, and Scoop B, Brandon Robinson, released this yesterday. He thought from his reporting that the Pelicans would open the season at home against the San Antonio Spurs. That is correct, on October 24th. But they will open the regular season on the road against the Memphis Grizzlies on October 22nd. So a divisional opponent to start the season, a marquee matchup in that regard. You get the Zion and Ja Morant going head to head, the top two players from that 2019 draft, both of them with a lot, obviously, of a lot to prove this season for the both of them at this stage in their careers. Two stars whose teams are looking to understand if these are guys you can build around for the long term or if they potentially have to rebuild. So that's a very dramatic opening for the Pelicans. They have 40 home games scheduled. That 41st is kind of dependent on what goes on with the NBA Cup during the regular season. You see if you get that matchup based on how your record is, whether you advance to the second round and things like that. So the 40 scheduled home games, 15 of those will be played on Fridays, 6 on Saturdays, and then 15 will be played on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. 6 on Fridays, 5 on Saturdays, 4 on Sundays. So 15 out of 40 are weekend games. That means 25 during the regular part of the week. Most of those tip off at 7, as they have in the past. Only 2 national televised games, and we were kind of joking about this in the group chat, where it was like, they went from 30 scheduled televised games before the COVID pandemic hit to now 2 this season. And, this is an entertainment business. It's about availability. It's about when your stars are going to show up. And it's really hard to schedule the Pelicans regularly on television if you don't know that the star of the show, Zion Williamson, is going to show up. So it's really hard, I think, for television to want to put the Pelicans in prime time, even if they potentially could be an exciting team to watch. You kind of have to wait until the season starts to play itself out to figure out if the New Orleans Pelicans are going to be a television draw worth rescheduling and moving and changing some of the schedules for games. Right now, those 2 nationally televised games, one is on December 8th against the San Antonio Spurs, and then the other, January 30th, against the Memphis Grizzlies. Those are fine. 2 national televised games you get against Victor Wembanyama in December. And then, of course, the Memphis Grizzlies, again, a team that you're going to play 4 times this year as a divisional opponent. That's fine. Whatever. I don't think Pelicans fans are as concerned about being on national television as they are about the availability in the local market and the quality of the programming and the ability to get Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. It's going to be intrinsic on them to put a better product than they did last year. And that's no shade to any of the people who work there. It's just, again, the timing of when they had to get it started and how they rolled it out. It was very awkward. The programming was awkward. They're trying to find their footing, and I'll give them the opportunity to do that, but it has to be better. You have to create a product that people want. And now with the cost of streaming services continuing to go up, it's going to be really important for the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network to put out quality programming and to make it accessible to Pelicans fans so that they can stay engaged with this team throughout the year. If there are going to be hiccups, and there will be some, no matter what, if it's a great season, it's a bad season, whatever, there's going to be hiccups. If your content is consistent in that regard, I think that you can help fans get through it, stay engaged, rather than having it siphon off into these internet communities where people are more willing to give up on the product. Obviously your home schedule, you play your Western Conference teams twice at home, twice away. So you know how that's going to work, except for Some teams that you're kind of glad that they're not playing 4 times. Denver, 3 games. Golden State, 3 games. Oklahoma City, only 3 games. Sacramento, 3. Utah, 3. Portland, 3. I think you'd rather have Sacramento and Utah be 4 times, but to only have to play Golden State, Oklahoma City, and Denver 3 times, you'll take that, right? I think that overall, when you look at the Pelicans schedule, the way things fall doesn't really matter. We've heard this before when it comes to schedule, and people are like, is the back end of the schedule easier? Is the front end of the schedule easier? I don't think those things matter. If you're playing good basketball, you're playing good basketball. Everybody's schedule has tough points and everybody's schedule has lulls. So I think what you're looking for the Pelicans, and though there are some concerns, the number of back-to-backs and those types of things, the real thing as the NBA schedules these baseball series where teams stay in the same place twice and things like that, I think scheduling doesn't matter as long as we don't know what the health of this team is going to be. So you look at these things and see where matchups may fall and where you might want to start looking and say, oh, I'm looking forward to this one. I want to see this team play. I want to see that team play. And that's great. But we know going into each and every year that it's really hard to plan when you're going to see the Pelicans because of availability. But that early start to the season, that's the part that I want to focus on because I've talked about this a number of times, and that the early part of the season, the first 10 games, and I want to get into that and break that down, and then we'll go into the actual 10 games this season, all right? So we'll start with, let's look at under Willie Green in particular, the first 10 games of the season over his 4 years as the head coach of the Pelicans, all right? So in his first season, the Pelicans were 1-9 in their first 10 games. In 2022-23, they were 5-5. 23-24, they went 4-6. And in 24-25, they were 3-7. So typically, after the first 10 games of the season, Willie Green's teams have started roughly 3.2, like 3-7. That's basically where they are at the end of first 10 games. And if you'll see, the gold number there is their season winning percentage. The red is the first 10 games winning percentage. So you go from 25% last year, to start the season, and you end up, 30%, you end up with a 25.6% winning percentage for the season in 24-25. But what you see there is that the gold is always higher than the red, except for last year. That means the Pelicans have been consistently trying to overcome bad starts. In 2 of Willie Green's 4 seasons, they made the playoffs. The 36-46 team in 21-22. And then, of course, the 49-33 team in 23-24. Both of those teams did make the playoffs with losing records after 10 games. The only 2 teams in franchise history to do that. But what did you get for that? You know what I'm saying? Like you had to overcome these tremendously bad starts. The one in 23-24 wasn't as bad. It's only 4-6. But you see that you're overcoming these negative starts for the Pelicans consistently under Willie Green. How does that correlate to the history of the franchise, you may ask? I can tell you. All right, as you look through, these are the playoff teams in the history of the New Orleans Pelicans / Hornets. And they have been to the playoffs a grand total of 9 times, right? You got 9 different seasons over there. And what do you see consistently? In the earlier days, 2002, 2003, 2003, 4, 7, 8, 8, 9. What consistently you're kind of seeing here, 10, 11 even, 8, 9, not so much, obviously. But 10, 11, you look at these seasons early in the beginning, really good starts, 7-3, 6-4, 8-2, 5-5, 9-1, all those up to 10 and 11. Really good starts. Teams that won a lot of games outside of that 03-04 season where they finished 500. And that was under Tim Floyd, and that was a really should have fired Paul Silas, but that's in the story for another time. All right. But then you look at these last 4. Okay, these are the last 4. This is Alvin Gentry, Monty Williams, and Willie Green. Overcoming bad starts. 14-15 was a decent start. They went 6-4. You win 45 games. 17-18, 5-5. You had to get better as the season went on. These are mediocre starts, but you're at least giving yourself a chance. But Willie Green, these 2, 1-9, 4-6. The Pelicans cannot get out of the gate poorly. It is just something that they cannot continue to do. Get out of the gate poorly. So what are those 10 games to start the season? What are those first 10? Memphis, San Antonio, Boston, Denver, the Clippers, the Thunder, the Hornets. There's your first respite, is the Hornets in game 7. Then Dallas, San Antonio, Phoenix. Let me just let that sit for a second. Those 10 teams. This is where the problem is, Pelicans fans. If you are rooting for the Pelicans to have a good season, you want them to come out and have a great start to that season, right? But if you want Willie Green to be replaced as head coach, you probably want a bad start to the season. Well, the schedule makers seem to not like Willie Green, based on what you see right there. A road game at Memphis to start the year. Pelicans don't typically do well in road openers. Home against the Spurs. They're going to be very tall in the front court. The biggest weakness for the Pelicans is height at this stage. We don't know how they'll operate, but we certainly know they are undersized compared to a team like the Spurs. The Boston Celtics are the Boston Celtics. You'll be at home, so you got home court advantage. But even without Jason Tatum, the Celtics are going to be a worthy opponent, right? The Denver Nuggets retooled on the road in Denver. That's a tough game. On the road at the Clippers, that's a tough game. A 3-game road trip that has Denver, the Clippers, and Oklahoma City. Denver, the Clippers, and Oklahoma City as a 3-game road trip. How many of those do you think they win? How many of those do they think they win? Charlotte at home should be a win, right? You counting that as a win. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. After the first 6, you maybe have one win. After the first 6 games, you might have 1. Hornets make it 2. Maybe Dallas is 3. On the road at Dallas, it'll be tough. That's a toss-up. It's maybe 3. San Antonio on the road, you don't count that as a win, I don't think. Phoenix on the road, you could win that game. So if I'm just glancing at this today, I think I'm saying 4-6. 4-6. Now, that doesn't, if you say, well, Grubb, look, 23-24, they started 4-6 and won 49 games. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. But that is not consistent with history, right? So you're playing with fire when you do those kinds of things, when you have these bad starts. You're playing with fire. And can the Pelicans afford to play with that kind of fire? It is going to be so important for them to get off to a good start this season. And that tells you that there's a lot of pressure on Willie Green. There's a lot of pressure on Joe Dumars. There's a lot of pressure on Zion Williamson to come out of the gate fast and try to win some games. I don't know if that's going to be easy to do. It doesn't seem like it's going to be easy. Because every one of these teams, Memphis is going to be favored. San Antonio is going to be favored. Boston's going to be favored. Denver's going to be favored. Clippers going to be favored. Oklahoma City's going to be favored. Again, you won't even be favored in any of these games. Probably in the first 10 games, the only one the Pelicans will be the favorite in is the game against the Hornets. You'll be the underdog in 9 out of 10 games to start the season. That doesn't portend a very great season, does it? How many teams that were underdogs in 9 out of their first 10 games of the season went on to win an NBA championship? And I know that's not what the expectation is this year. I'm saying, what is the ultimate outcome here? If you are ultimately not going to win a championship this season, which no one thinks that the Pelicans will win the championship, but if they are a competitive team, how long can this go before you're forced to make a Willie Green decision? How long does this go? How many games can you lose before Willie Green has to go? Because even if they go 4-6 and Joe Dumars says, hey, well, they're right around 500 if they go 4-6. Well, then you come back after that first 10 games is done. You come back home against Portland. I don't think that's an easy win. Home against the Lakers. Home against the Warriors. Home against the Thunder. Home against the Nuggets. It's like even those next 5 games, a 5-game homestand, and the Pelicans will be favored in maybe one of those games, and that's the Portland game. One. In a 5-game homestand, the Pelicans will be favored in maybe one of those 5 games. So after 15 games, the Pelicans could be favorites in 2, maybe 3 games. If they start the season 3-12, 4-11, is that a bad enough start to have Willie Green removed as head coach? Is that? How bad does it have to get for the New Orleans Pelicans after 15 games to think about firing Willie Green? Y'all tell me. Y'all tell me. And if so, does that mean it's James Borrego's job to take over? Is that somebody else? Did you bring in, some of these other coaches that you've gone outside to get this offseason? Are they potential replacements for Willie Green? And we also know that if you're not already winning, firing a coach in midseason rarely makes your team better. You may perform better, but you rarely get a kind of in-season bump that puts you in position. You might start changing things, reversing, but you're already behind the hole. You had to fire your coach. None of the teams that fired their coach last season won a championship, did they? They went into the playoffs, and some of them got further than maybe they thought. But, the Denver Nuggets getting to the conference semifinals, playing 7 games, would Mike Malone being there, would he have gotten them any farther? Did they get any better by changing coaches? I don't think so. I think you ended up probably where you would have ended up had Mike Malone been coaching that team. So if you have a poor team, even if you change the coach, it doesn't necessarily make the team that much better. You saw that with the Saints last year, right? Change the coach. The team didn't get better. The vibes were better. The locker room wasn't as toxic, but the team wasn't better. You can't fix the talent in the middle of the fight. You are what you are. And I think that's the thing for the Pelicans is, how are you going to manufacture a kind of good start? And what does that ultimately mean? Because you are in a pull in these 2 interests of whether or not you're going to keep Willie Green and go through this, or you're going to fail with Willie Green and maybe lose another season. It is the schedule makers did the Pelicans, and the Pelicans fans have talked about this, about, what kind of schedules they get to start. You got a good mix of home and road, but those games are brutal. Those are brutal games to start the season. You didn't get not many Eastern Conference opponents, which you would have liked to get a few more Eastern Conference foes in here to start the season to maybe stack some wins. But you are getting the heart of the Western Conference to start the season. The NBA is punishing the Pelicans in some way. And I'm not saying it's intentional, but I'm just saying this is a brutal start to the season for the New Orleans Pelicans, and they will be tested early. You will know very quickly by the middle of November, based on this schedule, if they can survive that, because you're talking about going into Thanksgiving, like I said, with these really, that 5-game homestand, and then following that up with Dallas, Atlanta, Chicago, Memphis, and then after Thanksgiving, you're on the road at Golden State. So, Chicago and Atlanta might be winnable games at home. Sure, you're going to be favored against those 2 teams. But again, every 5-game schedule, it looks like if you're just looking at those today, the Pelicans are going to be the underdogs in at least 40% out of every 5 games. So if you're winning just at that level, you're close to 500 maybe if you're outperforming it a little bit. But if you're performing at the way Vegas thinks you're going to be, this is a team that's going to finish somewhere between, like I said before, I think this is a team that wins somewhere around 36 to 43 games. At the best, 43. At the low end of its best, 36. And I think that looking at this schedule, the way the start is going to be, the way it's laid out, home and away, the Pelicans not being a great home team anyway and have never been under Willie Green, and against these teams in particular, it's really tough to get excited about the opening of the season. The players, it's on them. It's on them. Because I guarantee you're sitting there right now and you don't have confidence in Willie Green. At his best, do you think that he can get this team off to an 8-2 start to start the season? Or would you'd be ridiculously surprised? So this is on Trey Murphy. This is on Zion Williamson. This is on Herb Jones. These guys have to decide it themselves that it changes with them. Because no matter who the coach is, they've got to take this, draw the line in the sand, and say, we're going to fight. And this schedule is going to require that from them, because you cannot start 3-7 in this Western Conference and think you're going to make the playoffs. when the Pelicans are at their best in their playoff seasons that don't include Willie Green, their average start is 7-3. Under Willie Green 4 seasons, their average start is 3-7. You cannot get off to a bad start this season, and this schedule only further cements that understanding. All right, let's go on to the next thing, because the NBA Cup is another part of this and the schedule that you have as far as the NBA Cup goes. And those 4 games, you got Dallas, the Clippers, Dallas, the Clippers, the Lakers, and the Grizzlies. And when you look at that group of teams, the Pelicans last season went 2-12 against that quartet of teams. 2-12. Dallas 1-3. The Clippers 1-2. The Lakers 0-3. Memphis 0-4. 2-12. Over the last 2 years against those 4 teams, because I want to be fair, the last 2 years against those teams, the Pelicans are 10-21. The only team in that group that they have a winning record against in this time is the LA Clippers, who the Pelicans are 4-3 over the last 2 seasons against. Against the Lakers, they are 1-7. Against Dallas, they are 3-5. And against Memphis, they are 2-6. So you're not getting any favors done with the NBA Cup either. But remember, this is based on your winning percentage from the year before and how your team did. So this is the group you ended up in. And the Pelicans, who did make it to the NBA Cup tournament that first year in 2023-24, where they got demolished by the Lakers in Vegas. Last year, obviously didn't do very well. And then this year, you're faced with a very difficult schedule. And I think these are the kinds of things that put Willie Green's position on the hot seat even hotter, because these are very public and will be, very focused events for the NBA. It's becoming more important for the league to emphasize this tournament and grow it. And the Pelicans have, since that first year when they kind of start off and then got embarrassed by the Lakers, since that embarrassment by the Lakers, they've not done well in the NBA Cup. And so these are high profile things for Willie Green to either assert again that he can keep this job, or these are going to be more evidence to the contrary and show that Willie Green is no longer the best option for this team at head coach. I think that that's going to be evident at the end of NBA Cup play at the very least. And I'd kind of be surprised if we get that far. I mean, I think the combination of things between the first 10 games, between the first 15 or 20 games, and the NBA Cup being mixed all in that, I don't see a great start. And I don't think I'm being dramatic with that. We've been through it. I just don't see a great start. And I think the Cup is just going to be further emphasis so that the Pelicans have so much work to do. And you're starting to see some more of this kind of play out in the way the impressions of the team around the league has gone. One of the things before I move on, one of the things I was reading, and this was in Yardbarker, so take that for what it will, but it was listing the 20 worst contracts in the NBA. The 20 worst contracts in the NBA. How many do you think the Pelicans have on that list? 3. Pelicans have 3 names on that list: DeJounte Murray, Jordan Poole, and Zion Williamson, for different reasons. DeJounte Murray, I think, we understand why that it doesn't seem like it's a fit. It hasn't seemed like it's going to work. And that contract is going to be hard for the Pelicans to move, considering they've got almost $100 million owed for him for this season and the next 2. When you look at the Jordan Poole contract, I think people look at that as a bad deal because Jordan Poole is considered a high-level 6-man by most pundits around the league. And you take a high-level 6-man, you put him in a starter's role, and you wonder if he can be a lead type player at the salary that he's getting paid with the culture that New Orleans has. There's a lot of variables, again, in the career of a Jordan Poole to see if he meshes with New Orleans and what's going on here. And if the lack of leadership, the lack of success, if that further makes his bad traits emphasized rather than diminishes those and helps him continue to reach his potential. Zion Williamson, the reasons for that: availability and what that contract means due to availability now that it's guaranteed. And yes, there are things that he can still do to avoid the contract. But I think that the weight clause is probably not going to be a problem for Zion the way it seems like he's figured this out. I mean, but for the Pelicans to have 3 of the 20 worst contracts in the NBA, I think they're telling you the way that they perceive this team around the league and in the media. They do not think that this organization is run well. They don't think it's stocked with good talent. They don't think it's coached well. And the Pelicans have a lot of public perception to fix. Now, some good news, I will give this as credit for good news, is Yves Missi. And Yves right now is participating in Afrobasket, which is the African tournament like Eurobasket, the African championships. And it started on Tuesday. Yves Missi is playing for Cameroon. Josh Okogie is there from the Rockets. He's playing for Nigeria. And Missi had 12 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists in Cameroon's win over Tunisia. That was good for Yves. I think that the good thing here is you want to see Yves continue to play in high-stakes situations. And we see the growth of European players by playing in EuroLeague tournaments in the summer and for their national teams, and how that makes them better players when they come back to their U.S. teams in the NBA. So I think that there are a number of NBA players who are in this tournament. So I think that's a good thing for Yves to be able to go up against other NBA players like Owiniyi Gabriel, like Bruno Fernando's there, Eddie Tavares, Matt Costello, Christian Eyenga, Mamadi Diakite, Ibu Baji, Kareem Mane. So you have a lot of these players, and you have guys like Luol Deng, Desagana Diop, and Sam Vincent is there, who's not from Libya but working for Libya, all coaching in these leagues. So you have a heavy NBA influence in the 16-team tournament. And for Yves, I think it's a good opportunity to him to be in a competitive situation where the stakes are high, that you're motivated to win by, and people play harder for their country than they do for themselves at times. So I think this is a really good opportunity for Yves. They play group play through Sunday, then they get knockout round on Monday and Tuesday. Quarterfinals would be next weekend, and then the semifinals on August 23rd and 24th. I hope Yves does well. I hope he develops, and I hope he shoots the basketball well, but I hope he defends and just gets more of that opportunity and builds confidence in himself, thinking about what he can be potentially for the Pelicans this year, if he can continue to elevate his game and be the kind of player that they would really like to have him be this season. So shout out to Yves for doing that as well. The Pelicans have dropped their cap holds on a few players, just as some clearing up of some business, I guess, for the summer. The guys like Keon Brooks, and a few other cap holds like Jeremiah Robinson Earl and things like that. All of those guys, the Pelicans have released their claims to them formally. They were cap holds because the Pelicans had not formally cut their ties with them. There was a possibility that they could return. The Pelicans now have relinquished their rights to those players. It doesn't really free up a bunch of cap space for the Pelicans or anything, but it just means that those holds are no longer in place, and that the Pelicans are not prioritizing any of those players. And I don't think that we expected Keon Brooks after what happened in Summer League for him to come back. We certainly didn't expect Jeremiah Robinson Earl to come back to start the season, though I think JRE could end up in Birmingham or somewhere like that. And we know that Willie Green likes him, and the team likes him for his effort. We'll see if Joe Dumars thinks he's can continue to stay around, but he may end up in Birmingham. Keon Brooks could end up back in Birmingham playing for that G League team, but not getting a two-way deal or a regular NBA contract. These are guys who just would sign G League contracts outright. Before we go, I'll give you your opportunity. If you got any questions, I'm just going through the comments and just trying to look. First, Rob McCoy, thanks, appreciate it. I designed this one myself. I like to do that sometimes, but my Dawn Patrol shirt there, rocking it for the greatest set of linebackers in NFL history. If you don't know, you better ask somebody, but it is the greatest set of linebackers in NFL history. And I'll still say, and look, great minds can disagree. For my money, and this is for somebody who's been watching the Saints since 1979, and for my money, the greatest Saints player of all time is Ricky Jackson. I understand the Drew Brees case. I am not arguing against it. I'm just saying the greatest football player I saw wear a Saints uniform was number 57, Ricky Jackson. All right. Denzel, can't wait to see the guys January 4th in Miami. Could be with a new coach. Denzel. Maybe you get to see the first games for James Borrego by that time. Maybe that'll be your post-Christmas reward there. Shout out to Michael Morgan again. Appreciate you, Mike, with your super chat there. So yeah, the Pelicans, going back through it one more time. Let's look at that schedule one more time, those first 10 games. But even on the Pelicans website now, Pelicans face daunting start to 25-26 regular season schedule. Yeah. And I was just going to read this from this because Jim Eichenhofer wrote this and it just posted a few minutes ago, about 20 minutes ago. Strength of schedule isn't really a legitimate thing for pro basketball analysts to discuss. I agree. But franchises can say that they've been dealing with a more daunting schedule than the other half of the circuit. Yes, the Western Conference schedule is tougher. Absolutely. The West has outplayed the East in head-to-head matchups in 23 of the past 26 seasons. We get it. But when the Pelicans, 5 of their first 6 teams were playoff opponents last year, the only team that didn't make the playoffs is the San Antonio Spurs, and the Spurs are expected to make the playoffs this season, and they may have the Defensive Player of the Year and the MVP in one person. They could have the Rookie of the Year, depending on how Dylan Harper goes. They have last year's Rookie of the Year. It's going to be a difficult game. In the first 23 games of the regular season, every opponent other than the Spurs, Hornets, and Trailblazers at least reached the play-in tournament. Out of the first 23 games, 20 games will be played against teams that at least reached the play-in last year. They are not making it easy for the Pelicans. They are not. They are on the road for 7 of their first 10 games. They won 7 road games all last season. And yes, they set the franchise record with 28 2 years ago. But don't expect that this year. Don't expect 28 road wins. So you're trying to get closer to what? You know what I mean? You're trying to get to around 21, 22 road wins. That's a good team. Is right around above 500 on the road. You want to be above 500 on the road. Pelicans only done that once in 4 years with Willie Green. That was the 28 wins. It's a before Christmas, which is when the unofficial start of the NBA season is. The Pelicans are going to really, really be tested. The softest portion of the schedule, basically, according to Jim, is the 11 games between January 31st through February 28th. Only 5 of those are against teams that qualified for the playoffs last season. So yeah. I think that's. I don't want to put too much of a damper because we're going into the weekend and things like that. And folks, I want you to have a good, overall feeling about your team and those types of things. I don't think that I don't mean this to be negative, but look, the league put this together, not me, and it's really going to be difficult for the New Orleans Pelicans. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's going to be really difficult. And if history is any indicator, the Pelicans need to be better than expected early if they want to have a good season. All right, that's going to do it for today. I appreciate you guys tuning in for this live episode. We will be back as a crew on Sunday right here to talk more about these types of things and some other things as well, I'm sure. But I appreciate you all checking in today. You know how to follow me on social media at DM Grub on Instagram, on Twitter, Facebook, Blue Sky, TikTok. You can find me on all those places. Of course, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share, hit the notification bell as well. And make sure that you stay tuned to everything that we have here on Boot Crew Media. Until the next time, I'm David Grubb. You're you. Have a great weekend. This has been the Post Up right here on Boot Crew Media.